like I said last week, when Prince Harry dresses up for the costume party and he dresses as a Nazi, like his birthday is the day the Nazis adopted that symbol, which used to be a peace symbol from Hinduism, who was conquered by the British Empire and taken like a little totem. We're going to cover this block. It ends with the Babylon Bee, who again, like we swore off them a couple months ago, right? But I just felt that the video was in the theme of the other two clips. So it's not like I have respect for them, but I will use their content to make a point. And then we get to the O'Keefe Epstein story. And then we get to go to the Pedogate documentary. And then we have some other spicy topics beyond, right? And this is where most shows would be like, we're going to our members only show and we're going to do the cool stuff, but we're not like that yet. If you subscribe and become a member, we just keep this show free to the public the whole time. And you don't have to wait for, it to come out a week later or something like that. So if you don't want ad reads, you don't want sponsors, you don't want a bunch of nonsense, support at grandtheftworld.com, because we got a new website, yo. Check it out. Press all the buttons. Tell us what doesn't work. Find the error. Get a free membership. I don't know. That's not true. That's not a real offer. I just made that up. All right. In this block, very serious topic. CNN covers
CBN.
CBN? It was CBN? Really?
I think it's Christian Broadcast
Network.
Network.
It is. Oh, it's even better than CNN. Okay.
More viewers at CBN probably.
CBN's definitely going to have a flavor to it too. So we're going to see. I have not seen this. Not seen it. I didn't mean to make a pun. Did not. But I am looking at Ye with the tiny mustache man, and I said that. So is that Freudian? Or is that Jungian? Could be Jungian synchronicity. All right. And then we have JRE Clips reacting to Ye's new song being banned from streaming. So I respect the right of private organizations not to carry content they don't want to carry. However, when you are a public thoroughfare and you are blocking free speech and letting everyone else with other opinions pass, right? You can go do hammers and sickles and Stalin and Lenin and Trotsky and all this stuff. That's fine, right? Their death counts. Woo! Mao, you could be, oh, dude, I raised my hand up. Now they could take a still frame and be like, come on, everybody. Hitler's bad. Hitler's a very bad guy in history. So is Mao. So is Stalin. So is Pol Pot. So is Ceausescu. So is Saddam Hussein, right? There's a lot of bad guys through history. You know who some of the bad guys are? Who are worse? The people who funded and aided and militarized Hitler after Germany got crushed in Versailles. They weren't even allowed to have an army. Where did they get all their army stuff to play war? Somebody had to arm them. Who are the world's two largest arms dealers? Today, we can use the reference United States and UK. Back then, it was just the UK. The U.S. wasn't a whole, but there were some Anglo-American industrialists who did build things like railroad tracks and, exchange stations, like where they had to connect over there in that Polish city, right? That's built by the Harrimans, very famous, not just bankers, but they were a railroad tycoon family, Skull and Bones family. And what is Skull and Bones? It was founded in 1832 at Yale. What is Yale? It's the East India Company College in America. What is 1832? The year they privatized opium smuggling. And what is Skull and Bones? It's a German death cult that specializes in narco-terrorism. Fits right in with the British Empire because they were taken over by the Germans in 1806. Saxe-Coburg Gotha. Bingo. All right, let's go to the clips.
Just when you thought Kanye West's deterioration into overt anti-Semitism couldn't get any more absurd, the 24-time Grammy Award-winning rapper has released a new song called Heil Hitler. I'm not kidding. Well, Joshua Washington, director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, joins us now. Joshua, what's your take on this song?
Raj, I think that song is blatant, and it's, a lot of people like to say that it's veiled, that you got to open up your third eye or something and figure out what he's trying to say. And it's a commentary on a critique on censorship and things like that. The only problem with that for me, even as an artist, is that he has echoed these statements in interviews before this. He's doing this for the past couple of years. The Jews control everything. The Jews ruined my marriage and my family, and they're behind every evil thing in the world. And then talking about how great the Nazis were and how great Hitler was. So him putting all this in a song, it's really hard for me to see that he's just making a different point when he's literally been saying these things directly in talks with with interviewers.
I got to interrupt the block because I got two questions. The first question was, he said this thing about Auschwitz where they like take him down underground, and I don't know that part of the story. Do you guys know that part of the story? Because I didn't get that part of the story. From an engineering perspective, I don't understand it. Like, did they have tunnels underground with railway cars to move the bodies? Like, how does that all work? Or is it too morbid for most people to consider so they never question or like try to understand? Right? Because my question is based on I'm trying to understand his perspective. And he said this thing, and that thing doesn't make sense if they're also doing this other thing where they're trying to exterminate people. You would, I don't know.
I think he probably watched the Schindler's List documentary, or maybe it was, I'm not
Yeah, there you
sure.
go.
But they both were definitely leading with their Schofield Bibles. So
Yes, they
it's
were.
cool to see the Christian Zionist Network or Broadcast Network doing their thing and promoting the interests. But their talking points are also pretty old. Maybe not 4,000 years old, but those are some pretty
Well,
old
and that was the other
talking
thing
points.
because, you can't do the DNA tests in Israel without governmental authority. But from my understanding, if you go to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, the encyclopedia of the empire, and you look up the word Semite, it would say an Arab. Now, this is before the Schofield Bible and the Balfour Declaration and stuff. So don't go reading history in different versions and editions because you might notice differences that are inconvenient. But back then, a Semite was an Arab, the native people of that land. And then at some point, these Eastern European dudes did a little switcheroo. And they're like, no, we're the 12 tribes of Israel. They talk about us in the book. We're in the Revelation. We're the Lion of Judah, right? You heard like the whole Schoolhouse Rock caricature cartoon version of like how they understand things. I don't know if you should be taking your news from such people. I'm not sure that you're a CBN viewer on a regular basis, but don't like take a whole lot of that stuff seriously. Otherwise, you're going to be looking for like the fifth red heifer and like tunneling under the Temple Mountain stuff, which is like it's a little out there. Trying to bring about the end of the world, I think, is a little out there. You can do it on a personal level. Go ahead. You're welcome to do that. Don't try to end the rest of us at the same.
There was two big inconsistencies too in what they said. One was talking about Christians spitting on Jews, and most of the footage I've seen has been Christians in Israel having like Orthodox Jews coming up and spitting on them, tearing at their clothes, and generally just abusing them because they think lowly of them. And then the other I just thought was ironic that they were talking about Jesus being a destroyer and like having his robes have blood and all this stuff, and I was like, I don't think Jesus ever was violent against anyone except for the dudes who changed
The money changers.
money. So I don't know what, maybe that Schofield Bible's got some extra action bits that I didn't read in my normal other Bible, but it's, interesting for them to characterize. They're like stoked on the return of Jesus because Jesus will crush all the countries that were like, maybe Palestinians shouldn't be killed.
I mean, Schofield is really like once King James is like, hey, I can write my own version of the Bible, right? Because there are some differences between like King James version and, for instance, the Peshitta Bible, which you have there on your shelf that is translated from the direct Aramaic, which is the language of Jesus. So it's not that there's no truth to be gotten. It's just like they're not going to purvey it very easily to you. Yeah, there it is. See, I recognize books on shelves. It's one of my proclivities.
So it's been
yeah, go ahead.
frustrating, like the disconnect, and it's like it's very one sided. It's like you have all the Christian Zionists, very much in favor of all this. Like these guys, like what in the hell, dude? And but Judaism going the opposite direction. It's like, do they know like what the stance is? And I'm not gonna get sensational about it. There's like sensational claims about it, but at the very least, like they're trying to make it illegal to practice Christianity in Israel. Like they're actively trying to pass those
Didn't
laws.
Kanye say that he was a black Israelite
Sure,
or something
yeah,
like that,
sure.
like a year ago?
Yeah. And I was made a joke in the chat there about it's like the Kyrie Irving situation. He got in big trouble because he tweeted out this documentary. I looked it up. It's from Hebrews to Negroes, which kind of makes the point that they are the original Israelites, right? So maybe that's where he got that from, the whole Kyrie Irving thing. But then it also talks about, how like there was a lot of people involved in the slave trade, like who were the people that owned the ships, right? So there's that whole rabbit hole to go down. It's like I was like, do these guys have any idea about this? Like, this,
Well, those were actually Sephardic Jews from Spain, which are different than the Ashkenazi Jews from Eastern Europe. So there is like the Spanish slave trader names from Sephardic Judaism were like Gonzalez, Rodriguez. There are a bunch of names that you would not associate with Judaism or slavery, and yet I have all the books on it, but they're not in this studio. But there's a lot of history on that, and it's not a pejorative. I mean, Spain kicked out the Jews in 1492, the same year that Christopher Columbus took the Templar flag, put it on his ships, and sailed across for new lands. I'm not saying there's any connection. I'm just saying those two things happened in the same country in the same year, and
Interesting. So
interesting histories.
yeah, I was looking up that group. What was it? The Christian, Blacks and Israelite unit. Oh, what is it? I was just looking at
I mean, Kyrie Irving just probably spent too much time in Times Square because even 25 years ago, I think there were Black Israelites in Times Square. It's part of what makes Times Square Times Square. That and the cowboy in his underwear, the guy that played guitar.
That's right.
What are
The
they-
naked
what is-
cowboy.
Naked cowboy, that dude. He's always there.
I don't know if I'm getting things backwards, but the more I read into this history, it seems more like the Nazis were also Zionists because they wanted the big expulsion of Jewish people to go to Israel. And it almost seems like Semites are actually the Palestinians who are being genocided. So then the biggest anti-Semites would also be Zionists, which would tie into, if Nazis are anti-Semites, then Nazis are also Zionists. So I don't know. It's a interesting disconnect.
I haven't read this book in its entirety, but it is on that topic, and it was recommended to me by the author of this book. And this gentleman, if you notice his last name, he's from the side that was doing the thing. So this is not a white supremacist view. He's a little communist. He's a little communist. But his perspectives on Churchill, while not taken in totality, if you take the evidence and artifacts that he offers, like I don't have to agree with his conclusions necessarily, but I always find the artifacts being used to draw the conclusions are where I should start. Right. So I don't listen to someone and take their conclusions. I listen to someone, get their book, go through their book. How did they step by step arrive at those conclusions? And then I see if there's validity to it. It's called thinking, and it is the opposite of assuming. It is one of the principal skills that we actually teach people in a course that remains unnamed. I forget the name of it. But anyway, these types of pieces of evidence should be weighed on the scale because the Zionists, starting in 1933 with the Transfer Act, and I have the Edwin Black book over here, and we've talked about it on the show, there was an agreement because some of their goals overlapped. The Zionists from Eastern Europe wanted their people, but only the strongest of their people, to move to Israel and to colonize Palestine, to create the state of Israel. So that type of agenda, and Hitler had a similar agenda. And it wasn't until later in the war that he came up with different tactics and techniques to deal with that agenda. But from 1933 to like 1943, there was a lot of synergy between those two groups. And that group that was from Eastern Europe knew that they would have to sacrifice some of their own people to get their agenda. And that is echoed in the witness tree where they blackmail Nelson Rockefeller to get the votes so they could be recognized as a country because they're willing to sacrifice some of their own people. In fact, that deal was Nelson Rockefeller said you can have your blood or you can have your country. You can't have both. Meaning they took the country instead of retribution against the people who murdered 6 million of them. Or maybe there's a 7th million. I don't know. You have to look. You have to look into these things. I don't want to have spoilers. I want to entice you to read and learn about your world. I don't want to tell you my conclusions because you need to draw your own conclusions to be strong. I had one more piece on that. Because there was talk of Tiny Mustache Man, I have this to enter into the record. Blanche Balfour Dugdale. Balfour, that name's familiar. Oh, right. That was the document that the British government gave to Lord Rothschild so that they could colonize Palestine. Well, his niece brought Mein Kampf into English with her husband, Edgar. Now, this is interesting because to become Hitler in American parlance couldn't have been done so without them publishing his book in English. Nobody's going to read German and know what a bad guy he is. But if they, and I mean they, the people that kind of later funded Hitler to come to power, right? There was a king that had to step down because he's a little too pro-Hitler. Queen Elizabeth is on camera doing the thing. right? At like age 8. Like we pledge allegiance. In fact, the United States used to pledge allegiance with that same Heil Hitler salute. Did you know that? Do you know there were swastikas on the 1916 women's hockey jerseys? Sweaters, technically. Did you know that Rudyard Kipling, the man who wrote The Man Who Would Be King, used swastikas on the side of his books when he published them in the early 1900s? There's a whole use by they, them, those who later gave that symbol to a little National Socialist group over there. And they're like, go ahead, run with this. You know, and like I said last week, when Prince Harry dresses up for the costume party and he dresses as a Nazi, like his birthday is the day the Nazis adopted that symbol, which used to be a peace symbol from Hinduism, who was conquered by the British Empire and taken like a little totem, little souvenir. Oh, we picked this up. We took out the Mughal Empire. Now we got a bunch of swastikas. What should we do with them? Oh, let's put them on the next project. And now they're on Ye's project. Right? He did that whole Super Bowl ad where he's advertising one shirt and one shirt only. I don't have one of those shirts, but I understand like what he did. Right? That's how you got it past the censors at the Super Bowl. You don't show them what's going to be on the site when it actually goes live on TV. He's just like, just go to my website. You know, I'm selling Yeezys or whatever he sells. Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man.
No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man.